Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Midwest Ag This Week. I'm Stu Ellis. I'll take care of the chores for you today. The conflict in Eastern Europe has impacted agriculture on both ends of the crop, and we have both covered for you. Your local high school's VOAG program is going to be getting an upgrade if the legislature agrees with the governor. We'll run some tile lines, and we'll reminisce a little, so tell Dad and Grandpa to watch. And it all starts right now.
Welcome to Midwest Ag This Week with host Stu Ellis.
Well, all of that turmoil in Eastern Europe has not only turned the grain markets on its head, but the fertilizer industry as well. Both Russian and its adjacent state, Belarus, are major global suppliers of fertilizer. Closely watching is Greg Rule of Growmark, who's frequently asked about the impact of the conflict on the supply of nitrogen and potash.
Yeah, when I get asked that question, I like to break it into two parts for kind of near term for spring, because I think, it takes a whole year to make, produce, and move all these bulk commodities into place. So I think for the spring at hand, we're confident that supplies are going to be in place, but price is concerning, obviously, at the farm gate. As we look ahead, it's more unknown, just because we don't know how that dynamic is going to play out overseas. So it's terribly impactful, though.
What are the types of dynamics that are working on that? We know about sanctions, but I'm not sure what else there are.
Yeah, Russia is a huge exporter of crop nutrients to the tune of almost 40 million tons in the global market annually. When we kind of break that apart into countries that are friendly or at risk, pro-Russian or anti-Russian maybe is a different way to say it, almost 70% of that export supply is potentially at risk with sanctions and unfriendly nations to Russia. So that would be significant. That would be almost 30 million tons of supply.
How about Belarus? We know they're in the middle of it all, maybe not by choice, but nevertheless they're a big supplier of potash.
They are. They're huge. They're 20% of the world global trade on potash as well. So that would be significant. We probably take potash for granted in North America because so much of our supply originates really from Canada. I mean, Canada's a huge supplier. So we're confident the Canadians will remain loyal to our market, but there is certainly price ramifications for that kind of reduction in supply on a global stage.
And how should farmers budget for the fall of 22?
Boy, that's a wild card. That's a wild card. When we're talking about nitrogen, we're watching the European energy situation primarily because it's natural gas-based production. A lot of that ties back to Russia. When we talk about potash, we're talking about the Belarusian sanctions. So those are the big dynamics we're watching. So if you know how to call those, I could give you a better prediction on percentage to plan for.
And those are the best answers that the industry has right now. With the exception of a brief cut by Governor Blagojevich, statewide funding for vocational agriculture has been static. But supporters wanting to improve the quality of ag education have asked for an increase in state funding for the coming school year.
For 20 years, the state of Illinois budget has given $5 million to agriculture education. The governor's budget this year is proposing to the legislature boosting that to $7 million. Amy Lehman is a member of the Illinois Leadership Committee for Ag Education. And what spurred this change?
So ag education in Illinois is growing. So we have more and more programs starting and more programs that are adding more teachers. So the last couple of years we've added a couple initiatives that have taken a lot of money. One is the 3 Circles grant, which gives school districts an extra funding to support 400 hours of work for our ag teachers to support their time working with FFA members and on projects out of the normal school day. Right now 64% of our districts participate in that program, and if we want more teachers to participate, then we need more money. Also last year we started a new program for pre-service teachers to give them internship experience with industry. So one of the requirements of being an ag teacher is to have experience in industry. So you have experience with the skills that you're teaching your students. So we now have this new program to provide more pre-service teachers or our student teachers with those experiences as well. So as we're growing ag education, as we're providing more opportunities to our kids, then we need more money to support all this.
Is the legislature supporting it so far?
So far we've heard only good things.
Okay, so good luck on that, and that ends up being a better teacher, ends up being better ag education, and turning out better VOAG students. It's a great piece of news from Illinois legislature and the state for ag education.
Well, we had some good temperatures. If it had dried out a little bit, we would have had some beans in the ground. Probably.
Correct, yeah. But unfortunately, we've got kind of an active weekend here with multiple rounds of rain, especially for us on Sunday night. So.
And that's going to delay bean planting, early bean planting anyway.
Yeah, because we might be looking at some spots picking up 2, maybe even more than that, of inches of rain. So it is going to be an active and wet weekend for us, we're thinking here.
That's a delay.
Yep, yeah. So we do have obviously had the warming trend in our area. So the snow depth has definitely gone down across a lot of the state and the Midwest. So just a few basically little piles that are left over here according to our model. And obviously if you go into town on the big parking lots, you've got the big mounds of snow there, but pretty much everything else has been melted away. That being said, though, we do expect there to be an active pattern here for the weekend where multiple rounds of rain showers will be coming through, mainly during the overnight hours of our Saturday and for our Sunday. So this storm system is actually going to be a fairly robust one, potentially bringing parts of Iowa the chance for some severe weather during the afternoon hours of our Saturday, but it should be holding off until it gets to the evening hours of Saturday before it moves into portions of Illinois. Then at that point, we should be fairly quiet by early Sunday morning, and a lot of the day on Sunday should be dry. So basically a lot of Saturday afternoon and a lot of Sunday afternoon will be dry on both of those days. The overnight hours will be when we have the most rain. In fact, Sunday night will be when we see more rain than anything else, and because temperatures are still a little cool, we might have a little bit of some snowflakes mixing in for us on Monday, potentially even leaving behind some minor accumulation too. But for the most part, though, we're just looking at mainly rain out of this, where it could be around 1 to 2 inches worth of rain. The drought monitor, though, came out the other day, and it shows that northwest Illinois is still battling with some dry spots here and there, but for the most part, a lot of the state is looking to be okay, and this rain will obviously help keep things pretty good for us here. Our 8 to 14 day outlook, though, does call for cooler than average conditions, and Stu, we're also looking to be fairly normal with our precipitation. So looks like a lot of the middle of March is going to be a cooler than average time frame, but at least it'll be somewhat normal with our precipitation.
This part of the country has been wet the last 3 springs.
Yes.
The eastern Corn Belt has really been soaky.
And the western side has been dry.
Yeah. That's right.
Yep. So that's kind of how it's going to be here for the month of March.
That's right. We'll be changing the pork checkoff, or at least proposing it, right after this.
Welcome back to Midwest Ag This Week.
Illinois pork producers have voted to make some changes in their checkoff structure to be able to fight those regulatory battles like California's Proposition 12, which impacts every U.S. hog operation. By law, a commodity checkoff cannot be used for lobbying or legal expenses. The Illinois members made the change, says Association Executive Director Jennifer Tyree.
Our checkoff is mandatory that producers pay into, and those are used for education, promotion, and research. The non-checkoff dollars we voted to increase by 5 cents so that we could help with more regulatory issues across the country, like Proposition 12.
The California law basically sets a national standard for livestock production that is not in common use anywhere.
Absolutely. It was voted on in the state of California, and it changes the way that animals are raised across the country. And so this question has been brought to the Supreme Court by the National Pork Producers Council and the American Farm Bureau because it changes interstate commerce. How can you have one state dictate the way that our animals are raised across the country? It's still at the Supreme Court level. We're still on the list to potentially be heard, but we have not gotten a decision yet on if we will be able to have our case heard yet at the Supreme Court level. And so by us increasing our voluntary check, our voluntary rate that we pay in, these dollars that we collect for that can help us fight issues like that and stop our industry from having to change across the country.
The Illinois proposal will be considered later this week at the National Pork Producers Meeting.
And if all the state delegates vote in favor of this resolution, the rate changes will go into effect and we'll start being able to draw into those additional dollars to help fight off those regulatory battles that we are foreseeing in other states.
The Illinois delegates want the shift in funding to allow the organization to be flexible but still operate legally.
It is important because we are restricted from doing any lobbying with our mandatory checkoff. And so that's where a lot of producers want to continue to help give more funds. And so the solution was to drop the mandatory by 5 cents, giving that freedom to move those dollars to the voluntary side of things.
Typical methods for managing grain. The fundamentals, technicals, are not working, either for farmers or grain marketing professionals. Jeremy Glauner is the grain merchandiser for Top Flight Grain at Monticello, someone who's worked for global grain traders. And he says hourly news headlines change the markets, but it's hard to determine if they're bullish or bearish.
There's too many scenarios at work that are being active. So starting at the beginning, if you go back to, let's say, November, you were looking at a great crop in Brazil for soybeans, Argentina, Paraguay, everything looked wonderful. Everyone's short, you're seeing that come. You were going to displace a lot of U.S. export demand from soybeans, you're going to have a big carry out, and it was all going to work out. So what changed? Then La Nina reared its head. You've probably lost on the order of 30 million tons of soybeans in South America. That's more or less, say, about 1.1 billion bushels of soybeans. So that's where we were going and heading on why $14 was now a base in beans and starting to work up. Throw in the mix a week ago having Putin invade Ukraine, and suddenly you're not just trapping bushels in the Ukraine for corn export. So there might have been something like 7 million tons that was still needed to be shipped. There was over 1 million tons in the lineup waiting to get shipped. So it's not just delaying the shipments of those to new crop. That might have been Friday's story. By Monday, people were starting to ask the question in earnest, what happens if the Ukraine can't plant? So now people are entertaining, okay, a 20-25% decline in Ukrainian corn production. That if this continues for another 8 weeks, it's going to turn into 50 to 100% decline in corn production. So it's not just taking a couple million tons off the marketplace in old crop. It now could be a severe event for the new crop as well. Now, what I'd have to say is, against that, what if tomorrow we're talking about China getting Russia to stop? What if we're talking about Putin going home? It all seems illogical and impossible today, and yet that's what everything has been in the last 1 week.
Jeremy Glauner at Top Flight Grain suggests to farmers to de-risk. Sherm Newland, is that something that you would agree with, to de-risk?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very volatile this week. I think producers need to be taking advantage of these higher prices caused by the Russia-Ukraine war. Either make some cash sales in some old crop or maybe some cash sales in some new crop. But this is a time where I think options, even though they're going to be expensive, you'll need to have them in your toolbox this year.
At least get some of the risk off of you, the farmer, onto somebody else who's going to be able to manage it maybe better.
Yes. Put some of that risk on paper, make some sales, but you can buy put options. That way you can put a floor under the market, because you don't know when this thing could, start to come back down. It doesn't seem like it wants to be anytime soon, though.
And just briefly, a lot of the farmers around here in central Illinois are saying the basis has just completely dropped out.
It has been a little bit weird this week, especially in the wheat market. They went from, buying front-end wheat or new crop wheat all the way out to the September option. And, because there's a lot of risk if you're buying grain from somebody, you're supposed to sell it on the board. And if you're limit up every day, you're meeting some margin calls that could be really expensive. So there's a lot of unknowns out there, whether it's the wheat market or the corn market. Corn market's kind of doing the same thing. They moved some of the buying they, were usually looking at to farther out, or they're lowering the basis.
And the elevator operator, he's at the maximum on many of his operating lines of credit.
Correct. Yeah. So, not knowing where this could go. I mean, we've had wheat limit up, I think, every day this week, and we've had some spells of when corn was limit up. From their standpoint, they need to, reduce some of their risk as well.
All right, Sherman, we appreciate it. We'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to lay some field tile right after this. Well, Central Illinois has seen some $20,000 prices on farmland this past week. And as farmland becomes more valuable, many landowners want to drain ponds and some of their lesser productive areas by having field tile installed. They can make a call to a member of the Illinois Land Improvement Contractors Association.
As we look at all of the building blocks of Illinois agriculture, one of the groups that's very important to a lot of farms and farmland is the Illinois Land Improvement Contractors Association. The folks who put out the field tiles and help drainage, and that's important to crop yields. Brian Arch is the executive director of LICA, Land Improvement Contractors. And tell me what the organization is all about.
Absolutely. Well, Stu, we're a not-for-profit trade association. We're a chapter part of a larger national association here in Illinois. We've been around since about 1957 in the state. We've got about 200 to 300 members between our basic contractor members that are doing ag conservation work out on the landscape. So really dedicating their services to the professional conservation of soil and water resources across the state. So we also have a membership base made up of what we call our associate members, and they're everybody that provides a good product or service to our contractor membership base. So similar to Caterpillar here today at our trade show, they support our members and get them all the products and materials they need to complete conservation on the landscape. So as an association, we provide three main things: education, everything from all different kinds of services that our members provide, from septic training to things on landscaping, safety education, business education. We provide a slew of benefits. We have 24 some benefits that come oftentimes from national, but we have some state level benefits as well, where members can get discounts on equipment, discounts on insurance, various types of attorney phone call programs, education programs, you name it. And then our third part is legislative. So we have both a voice here in Springfield. We have a whole committee within our organization that's dedicated to keeping an ear to the ground on anything legislatively that may impact us here in the state. And then we also have a national rep in DC that monitors that at the federal level for us as well. So.
Okay. Tell me some of the things that would happen in Springfield here that you might be involved with, some of the things that you've had some successes in the past, or things that may be coming up in the legislature this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So good question. So right now we're kind of focused legislatively on funding for conservation. So there's a few bills out there right now looking to incorporate nutrient loss. We're in those circles. A big issue here for us in Illinois, trying to remove those nitrates and phosphorus from the surface waters. So trying to get funding for that at the state level, and then also help our partners in conservation, soil and water districts, get funds to maintain operations and help us get conservation cost shared and implemented, and technical assistance and all that good stuff out on the landscape. So
all right. Some of the important work that the Illinois Land Improvement Contractors Association does.
And they're starting to do a lot more work in the summertime too. It's interesting. We're going to be reminiscing. Grab Dad and Grandpa. Tell them to watch this next segment. A few weeks back, the Illinois Farm Bureau transferred its ownership of Agrivisor to Growmark. Agrivisor was the first service to provide commodity marketing advice to farmers, who initially got daily reports on a sideband radio, common in thousands of farm homes. It all began in 1973 with a Stark County farmer named Jim Gill.
Yes, it all started out The pilot project started out in my office on the farm. I'd farmed for 15 years and become very, very interested in the markets and how they worked. And so the Illinois Farm Bureau had General Telephone lay a underground cable from Wyoming, Illinois, 7 miles away to my office so that I could make special broadcasts from that location every day. And we had a 3 or 4 minute market broadcast after the markets closed each day.
Subscribers wanted more and more information.
And the first advisory person that came on board was Gary Ellis. Gary, he grew up in the Decatur area, but I believe he was teaching ag in the DeKalb area at that particular time, and he knew something about charting, and I was quite interested in people that knew how to create price charts and interpret them for the benefit of the listening audience.
Gill said weather was not the only market driver.
And of course, the farmers are always interested in weather. They're pretty much tuned into weather. But these economic and political factors are big market makers too. And that was part of my emphasis, was that you have to keep an eye on Washington, D.C. and things other than just weather.
And it expanded from information to education.
At a later point in time, when a full staff was involved and so forth, Agrivisor became a teacher. Would have outlook meetings and teach people how to read the charts and interpret the market in a more modern way.
Really interesting when Jim Gill says that there's political things that affect the markets too, and that's certainly happening right now. We appreciate you looking on with us today, and we'll see you right here next week. I'm Stu Ellis.